Do it.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar presentation, Text Changes in a COVID World, presented by FEI Twin Cities Chapter. As you all get settled in the room, I see some people still joining us. We'll get started in just a second, and in the meantime, I will give you your CPE announcements. This program will be worth 1 CPE credit today. To be eligible for your CPE credit, you must answer 3 of the 4 polling questions during the webinar and have a total viewing time of at least 50 minutes. CPE will be available in 7 to 10 business days after the webinar. We are unable to grant CPE credit in cases where technical difficulties preclude eligibility. CPE program sponsorship guidelines prohibit us from issuing credit to those not verified by the technology to have satisfied the minimum requirements as stated. If you do have issues with polling questions, please answer in the chat box or let me know, and we'll be sure to award you the credit. And in accordance with the standards for the National Registry of CPE sponsors, CPE credit will be granted based on a 50-minute hour. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Jill Nussbaum. Jill is the Professional Development Chair at Twin Cities Chapter and also the Engagement Director at Cliff Larson Allen. Welcome, Jill.
And thank you, Nancy. On behalf of FEI, I would like to welcome all of our members, strategic partners, and guests who are joining us today. We're delighted that our strategic partner, Atomic Data, is joining us to discuss technology changes that companies are making in response to COVID-19. Before we kick off today's program, I'd like to make you aware of just a few upcoming virtual programming events. Join us next week on February 9th when our strategic partner, BMO Harris, hosts a panel discussion on how CFOs can prep their owners for a successful exit or sale. And join us also on February 18th when Be the Match CEO Amy Ronaberg and Senior Vice President Julie Smolik discuss how Be the Match navigated uncertain and challenging times and hit a milestone of impacting the most lives ever through their support of blood stem cell transplantation. And then finally, join us on February 23rd when our strategic partner, CIBC, discusses the trajectory of the economy, the impact of the US elections, and the longer-term implications of the economic crisis. You can register for these events and more at feitwincities.com. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Ryan Smith, Solutions Consultant at Atomic Data. Ryan will introduce our speaker and moderate today's session. Ryan?
Thanks, Jill. Well, we are excited for our session this morning here, introducing technology changes in an evolving COVID-related world. Today I have the pleasure of introducing my CEO, Jim Wolford, who will be taking over the presentation. And we're looking forward to a conversational morning here. I'm looking forward to a lot of questions and feedback throughout the presentation as well. So with that in mind, I'll throw it over to Jim and let's get rolling.
Thank you very much. Before Jim gets started, let's push out our first poll to our audience. Your first poll is, do you wish to earn CPE credits for today's presentation? You will have 3 additional polls after this poll, and I'll give you just a few seconds to answer that question. In the meantime, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give Jim an opportunity to bring up his PowerPoint. And I'll end that poll now, and thank you very much for your attention to the polls.
All right, my name is Jim Wolford. I hope everybody can see my screen. Ryan's going to give me a thumbs up if he can. All right. I'm very much a interrupt me if you have a question. So please send in your question on text on the texting feature, and we will interrupt at any given time and talk about your questions. So tech changes in a COVID world. So this can mean a lot of different things. So really, we're going to talk about adapting to survive. We're going to actually give you case studies, and we're going to talk about next steps, how you actually move these sort of topics forward. It's very different for everyone. So we're going to try to really talk about live case studies in Minnesota of clients that we've worked with during the last 12 months. And what they've actually done. I think how some of these conversations can be a little esoteric at times. It's easy to talk about, but harder to implement. And when they really are different for each and every one of us, I think it gets a little convoluted. So adapt to survive. You know, what does digital transformation mean to your business? And I guess I even get, you know, a little confused when people say digital transformation. Sounds like a topic that marketing people like to use to get a larger budget out of their owners. So what it really means is changing the way we do business so that we can do it using technology, so that we can send all our employees home, so that we don't have to rely on physical expense reports being submitted. Makes it very difficult when we're all working remote to do those things. Moving all of our workflow, or as much as humanly possible, to a platform that uses software. And that's really at the core of this. And then it's also, how do my customers order from me? How do they buy from me? How do they see me? And then how do my vendors interact, and how do we interact with our vendors? So the more we can get this to a digital workflow, online, submissions, both in and out, the easier it is for us to adapt and survive, especially during these times. Business is sometimes mere biology. Those who survive are not necessarily the strongest or the most intelligent, but they're the ones that adapt to change the fastest. And we're really seeing that this year. There were a lot of great companies going into this year that have just been really decimated. And I think each and every one of us know many of these companies, depending on who their market was, how they got supplies, how they ordered, what their supply chain looked like. This could be very interesting. So it doesn't matter whether you're the smartest or most intelligent. It's, can you adapt the quickest? One great instance of this is Apple had a really hard time for the last 6 months fulfilling their iPad orders. So you're talking about one of the strongest and most intelligent companies, I would say, and their supply chain is not reacting well to this new environment. They're having hard times getting things out of countries and into other countries. And really, we're starting to see that if they can't adapt to those changes, they're going to have a really hard time. So adapting is a lot better than just being the smartest kid on the block. Digital transformation has become this very large mandate. A lot of our clients come to us now, and just giving them IT services or outsource services or, you know, cloud, but not thinking about their workflow, not helping them with their software, not helping them make these changes, can make us irrelevant if we do not react to our clients and help them. We're getting a lot of this sort of mandate that even our business, a tech company that is, I would say, fairly cutting edge, if we don't keep being cutting edge for our clients, you know, we're not going to be able to handle this mandate that they're starting to give us. A lot of companies that haven't invested in IT are now wishing they did. Just having the guy down the hall that takes care of the printer and the laptops may not have gotten you through this last year. And so we're really seeing a lot of companies pushing very hard now on hitting these new mandates. You know, has your digital technology budget increased or decreased during the pandemic? So this is a poll question that should be popping up. It's a very interesting question. You know, we've seen companies shrink and try to survive through controlling expenses. I've also seen companies that I did not expect to double down and really go hard on investments towards the future. We grabbed some data for you off of a couple McKinsey reports that have just come out. And this really, most of this was coming into the pandemic. So on average, products and services, who has really started jumping into this digital world? And if you look globally, we're really looking at about 55%. Asia has been catching up very quickly lately, and they're at 54. Europe is still a bit behind at 50, and North America has always been sort of the leader, but others are catching us, 60%. We think that the last year is going to throw all of these up, but I think North America will be higher than the other countries. We have seen more spend here and more recovery, while others have stayed deeper in lockdown. Some of these digital mandates, the funding for digital initiatives have increased more than anything else across the IT budget. According to McKinsey, many of these companies have accelerated this to a degree that they're 3 or 4 years ahead now. And we have digital products in their portfolio that have accelerated 7 years. So we're really seeing a very quick movement here. We've been sort of waiting for this for a while. People have been moving to the cloud. People have been, kind of getting out of the hardware world. We really are seeing an acceleration of end users right now, working anywhere they want to. Clearly, COVID has accelerated that. But now we're seeing people looking at their supply chains and how their customers get to them, and seeing that that also has to move faster into this world. So the speed of transformation is way up. If you're not, I think, thinking about this or looking at this, you're gonna seriously be behind going into 2021. I think we just saw the poll pop up and it looked about 50-50, a little bit more towards increasing. We're going to show you some case studies here of what some companies did. We're seeing companies that acted. They're clearly getting a lot faster at sort of being flexible. For remote working, companies moved 50 times faster than they thought possible pre-pandemic. And I think I've heard this across the board a lot. Even I was shocked when we moved a few departments home, how fast they did it. We were ready, and how the workflows were already kind of digitalized, so it wasn't that hard to do. But it took this pandemic to push the CEO of a tech company to have my service desk, which is about 60 people working 24 hours a day, working remote. And we did it very quickly, and all our workflows were already digitalized, and it went very smoothly. But it took this pandemic to push me to that. And that's an interesting tale, I think, for all of us.
Hey, Jim.
Yes, Ryan.
Before you pop on to the next slide here, we've got a question from George Boyages here.
Yep.
George was asking, Jim, what are some examples of companies you think of as digital leaders, and how have they differentiated themselves over their more analog counterparts?
I'm going to kind of actually jump ahead a little. I think, George, there's a lot of shifting priorities. I have some examples that I think are going to be really telling, that will show you exactly what George is asking, and it's right after this. So if we get the poll question, how does leadership view technology primarily as a cost, or do they see it as the thing that's going to thrust them forward? To me, the companies that I look at, you have to control your spend. There's no way that we're, talking about people just getting kind of crazy with technology and doing whatever IT says. That's clearly not what anybody is proposing, I think, especially from our company. We've seen 10, 20 years ago, people did that and they lost money inside technology. And I think most financial individuals and companies are always very, you kind of hold back a little bit sometimes, and you really need to see a clear path when someone is asking you to go in a new direction and spend money. I'm just jumping ahead on a couple of these things.
Here are the results of that last poll, Jim.
Yeah, I think this is changing, and I think that 10 years ago we would have seen a completely different answer. Matter of fact, I would say that technology always was underneath the office management. It wasn't even attached to anything strategic. And I think today we're seeing something very different. So to us, gaining that advantage are really looking at all of these, and then we're going to get into the examples, George. You've got to look at the efficiency advantage. Are these technologies, are these pieces of software truly going to automate some of our processes? Are they going to remove some employee costs? Are they going to increase employee productivity? Just throwing in a new system doesn't always mean that you've thought it through and that it's anything more than just cost. If it's not going to result in lower expenses and higher output, then I think that it is something you really need to look at and not just do because everybody else is doing it. And a great, for instance, for that is, I moved accounting systems this last year. And I really pushed my people before we did it to plan it for a year, to show me where we were going to see the efficiencies, where were we going to cut back in different areas to pay for the expense of going to a different system. And I really had to work with everybody to understand that it needed to show itself in the numbers and not just be the next thing we do because it's an upgrade time. And I think you have to push on these first two items big time. I think the third item has become very interesting this year because as we shifted a lot of these employees home, and as we're buying from vendors and selling to clients, and we're not seeing each other as much, and it's becoming digital, what's our number one problem here is twofold. I think you have to worry about security. And we've seen a tenfold to phishing and to hacks and to things during this last year. So you really have to worry about that. And secondly, you have to worry about losing touch with your customer. You can go to a digital process for ordering, for bringing clients in, but if you lose that touch with the client, I think those two factors are going to be things we have to keep an eye on. And then, of course, the agility factor. These 5 points are what I look at all the time when we're going to make decisions on technology. I would hope that all 5 are going to be enhanced. But you really have to think it through these days, because I think that changing your workflows, changing that digital presence, whether it's online with customers, online with vendors, or online with employees, it's got to have all these features involved, or you're going to make mistakes. So the case studies that we were talking about that George brought up, these are real. These are things we've done. I may slip up and tell you the names of the companies. We're trying not to, just out of anonymity for them. Clearly, you'll understand some of them, and that's okay. Most of our clients are fine with us talking about their projects, but these have been really interesting. And I saw companies kind of duck under the desk in March and April, especially when things closed. And then I saw them come out from under the desk, and I think the real leaders showed up and started thinking about, okay, what are our plans? How long is this going to last? Is it long enough that I need to make big changes? And how are we going to adapt and do the things we said earlier? And I was shocked, to be honest, at some of the customers who really jumped ahead. And I think now they're way ahead as we go forward. And they didn't wait. In March, a lot of us thought by fall, this was going to be over. So those who adapted are now set if this continues through all of 21 and into 22, which I think is now a reality that we're all going to have to face. Do you have questions come in, Ryan?
Yep, Jim. So before we get into the case studies, Jay Trumbauer asked, Jim, are you seeing an increase in outsourcing of IT projects or staffing to be more agile and moving faster to complete projects in this environment?
Yeah. Yes, we are. One of the things that we saw were companies that I never really thought were going to outsource IT, looked at it this year. Many of them did it for many reasons. One reason is now that I have 100, 200, 300 people working from home, that one help desk person or the 2 IT people can't handle 100 people calling in and needing support. It used to kind of trickle in, and I think that they could handle it. But it really did change the help desk support mechanism. And we are seeing companies want to be able to have something happen. And if 100 people call in at once, they're handled. They can't wait and put 100 people in a line and let them get handled one at a time. So yes, we've seen a lot of outsourcing of service desk. Then a lot of companies that had the 2, 3, 4 IT service admins. As you do this digital transformation, as you get more software as a service, as you go to cloud, you need a workforce that is agile and can keep changing with you. I think most of us know that a lot of people in the IT industry, although it's a cutting edge industry, the old crabby service admin who isn't so agile and isn't bringing you new ideas and isn't always ready to give up their network for what's better for the company is really under scrutiny now. And a lot of companies that I never thought would, because we do both. We do complete management of IT, and then we also do what we call a la carte. And that is where we just sell IT stuff. And we're sort of an overlay for IT. So we have a lot of clients who have been doing that 20 years with us. And I've gotten a lot of calls where I'm now helping them look at how do we keep changing, because I don't think if my people aren't all back or they're back hybrid, that I need this older model of having internal IT. I think there are a lot of companies that are more comfortable having a really close relationship with someone who has 700, 800, 1,000 customers, because that relationship is bringing you what other people are doing. They're bringing you more cutting edge stuff. Their opinion means more than someone who's internal and just always looking at the same network all the time and trying to protect kind of their turf. So we are seeing a lot of changes in that.
Awesome. We've got a couple more here.
Go ahead.
David Knoll asked, do you see opportunities to increase connections and moving to more digital elements and processes? David gave an example here, adding a video component to a transactional aspect of business that were traditionally just paper processes, such as initiating or completing a purchase order or invoicing.
Yeah, I mean, I just before we got on this call, I was online with a nurse from Volt doing a COVID test because I traveled earlier this week, and I wanted to double check, and it's an easy test, but it was interactive. I couldn't actually keep taking the next steps in the test without the nurse coming onto a Zoom call and kind of closing it out with me. And so instead of me being left alone with this packet and the spit test and all this stuff, even though it's fairly simple, there was a human being engaged with me, and it made it a very easy process. And I think we're starting to see a lot of people doing this in their presentations, in their sales, in account coordination. We're changing some of our processes where certain things during the month don't get signed off on until they meet online with a customer account rep and go through certain reports and go through their risk management reports, because those are things we can't just send and lose the personal touch, and we can't just send and not have that relationship continue to get built. So when you do look at your workflows, you kind of can find the places where you still want that human touch. Sometimes we want it to verify different processes, but to me, I want them engaged because I don't want to become just something that you transact online, because it's easy to replace me with another vendor. We all have to be kind of careful at that aspect of this. Other question, Ryan?
Awesome. Yep, we've got two more here. What are some of the best workforce strategies you've seen? How are companies using Atomic Data's technology solutions to attract, enable, and ignite their workforce?
Did that come from you, Ryan? I was just kidding.
It didn't, no.
Sounds like a softball pitch for me to talk about Atomic. What we're seeing is where you need to be flexible, where you need better IT. You need somebody coming to you all the time with different solutions that are changing rapidly. We're seeing people outsource IT, use companies like ours to be their CIO, to be their overlay. It doesn't mean they're getting rid of all of IT. They're keeping application specialists, they're keeping database specialists. There are certain things I think you want to keep inside that are core functions. But if you can have somebody help you with strategy and then have them also backfill easy stuff, service desk, where you need a lot of my people but I think the word you want is agile. You know, if you want to use me a lot during a problem and then it shrink back down when you don't need it, because you're not going to have that many problems if your IT is built correctly. So people are looking at elastic and agile, and therefore you can't really have that with a fixed staff internal. And then they're looking for strategic. They want to keep seeing new things. They want somebody to bring them ideas that they've seen with other clients and that they're working on in other areas. So I think those are pushing people to look outside of a traditional IT department. And I think that that is the model that we're seeing a lot of people go to. And so that staffing of that is a lot easier. You know, we have a healthcare client who they have help desk during the day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and they have a small staff. And then nights and weekends, they use Atomic. And so there's a joint effort there, not a replacement. And it allows all of their users to have their stuff fixed. They don't wait till the next day. They're seeing more tickets come at night and on the weekends. They're seeing more customers come to them at night and on the weekends because somehow their customers don't come to them during the business day. They're doing other things, and they come at night, and they're seeing that this totally expanded what they could do, but it didn't replace what they did. It was an overlay. So as we become more 24/7, that doesn't mean you have to spend the money on a 24/7 staff to have an overlay IT staff on top of that. And so I think that's another strategy that's been working for larger companies that need that extra, and even some smaller companies that just don't want to bury their IT staff. They're also wanting that night and weekend to be done and things to be handled by others, so that Monday morning the IT staff isn't inundated, and also people aren't waiting, because none of us wait very much any longer when we have issues. Hopefully that answered the question. If it didn't, keep sending it back in.
And Jim, I think that's an interesting point too, with, you know, the overlay example, and thinking about organizations that can leverage or add more of a 24/7, 365 aspect to their business that they can and then turn into more of a competitive advantage for them in differentiating in their respective industry as well. So that's.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people on the call saw this, but it was amazing to watch my employees, and some of this is good, some of this is bad. A lot of parents had to spend the day with their kids. So I had people working more in the early hours and in the later hours, and in the middle hours, they were actually schooling their kids. And I was fine with it if they got their work done. But what happened was I saw a change in that Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, where is when the IT staff wants to be on. They don't want to be interrupting dinner and doing all these things. Most of those cats don't like to operate that way. They get a little cranky. And so it was interesting to see that change with parents, and having a service desk that's on all night and on all the weekends, and they're at 6 a.m. Is a lot easier to work with that type of now new worker. Other question, Ryan?
Yep. We've got a question here. How do companies structure internally to lead technology changes? Is this a dedicated person or team, or does existing leadership teams take this on?
It's very interesting. I think we've seen it from all over now. So I know that's not an answer anybody wants. Sometimes they have a technology committee, and they have a couple key departments. I would generally say that sales, marketing, and operations need to have a person on that. They're the ones that are going to see what the customers are asking for. If you lose a deal during an RFP or from a sales standpoint, listening to sales, even though that can be complicated at times because they always want everything. Listening to them is how you're going to listen to the market. Same with marketing. And so most companies have a technology committee that they listen to. Depending on how large the company is, I think you've got C-level are clearly out there looking at everything, and some of our case studies will show you what happened. And then they also look to companies like ours. We have business meetings where we talk about the future and technology planning. And a lot of times we're probing companies about what they should be doing. And a lot of times we bring up things they've never even thought of. Around how they service their customers, how they turn their products into more profitable entities. So you'll see a couple case studies here where we did that with a few customers, and they were like, you guys can do that? Great. And then all of a sudden they saw a massive change in how they handled their clients. Any other questions?
Awesome. Yep, we've got two more here. One from David Knoll here. In the past year, David's encountered many companies that have made what seem like short-term adaptations or workarounds to their traditional processes versus making a commitment to transforming to a more digital or virtual process. What percentage of businesses are just trying to make the minimum adjustments compared to those that are making more permanent changes to transform their processes moving forward?
I mean, I think if we face it, companies under 100 employees, unless you're in a financial position to really make and double down on these investments, it's very complicated. So depending on how bad COVID hit you is really whether or not you could make that jump. I see companies over 100, 200, 300 employees. They may be a little deeper financially. They think more long-term because, of course, when they put something in place, if they don't train their people right, if they don't do it, the entity shakes a little bit more when it doesn't work. And so you see larger companies, clearly, they make more of a commitment, and smaller companies Band-Aid until they have to. And I think that I've seen that across the board. I've seen a few smaller companies see this as an opportunity, and they really jumped out there with either being more online, getting to their clients differently. Some of them got flooded with orders because their industry got hit, really in a good way hit. Anybody in the home goods industry, we have a decking company, we have anybody selling home products. People were stuck at home. They did their home products. So most of those companies have just gotten destroyed with orders and they can't even fill them anymore. So a lot of those smaller companies had to figure out if they wanted to stay relevant, how were they going to keep servicing those clients? And they had to find better and bigger workflows to handle supply chain. Funny story is we have a company that does fish tank supplies. All the little green leaves and the little divers and the rocks, and believe it or not, they have thousands of products. They got just inundated this year, and they had to actually find more supply chains because a lot of things overseas for a couple of months weren't coming over here, and they went to a more local vendor structure. So a lot of things are happening. I think the smaller people react quicker, but have less to invest in digital transformation. And the big guys, if they can move fast enough, are doing it. But some of those bigger companies have a hard time moving fast. And so there's a balance there. But I would say that it's less than 50% are really making the transformation, and over 50% are Band-Aiding. Any other questions?
Awesome. Yep, we got one more here from Gary Perkins, directed for me, actually. Gary's asking, have we seen any companies in industries that you were surprised how quickly they pivoted digitally? And Jim, I think one that was close to me here was within the world of senior living and assisted living facilities. And interesting use cases when all of the different restrictions by the governor were set out for on-site visits to senior living homes. These companies had to develop a new method for interacting with families, interacting with their care staff as well. So we saw a lot of organizations adopt technology like Zoom or technology like Microsoft Teams to bring in kind of a new way of connecting with the people in their lives that they were, so desperately wanting to spend time with. So that was certainly an interesting industry that I came into close contact with. Jim, any other thoughts around that as well? You are muted.
Yeah, my mouse likes to disappear. Yes, our first case study, and I'm gonna jump into this now, and we'll talk a little bit about this. So we have these four And the first one really shocked me. I'm just going to be honest. I like to think that I'm always cutting edge and I think in front of our clients, but we have a very large, hair care franchise here in town that's national. And actually they're here and in Canada. And they really got just decimated by the close downs and the lockdowns. Sorry. And they really went away and started thinking about how are we going to handle this when we get to mild reopenings? How are we going to do contract tracing? How are we going to do all of this? It wasn't like they were sitting on millions of dollars to invest in these things. And so what we saw happen was sort of this. The immediate reaction was this, luckily we had built them a very agile network that shrunk when they weren't using it. And their bills shrunk when they weren't using it. So when you close 4,500 stores, if you're still getting your bills like you are your rent from IT, it's very complicated. Luckily, when they closed, they had no revenue coming in. They needed to see that there weren't a lot of costs going out. We had built them a flexible model that shrunk when they shrunk. And so first reaction is tighten up, right? Really tighten up and then sort of figure out where you're going. So first order of business that I think we learned, and luckily we were prepared for, was have a flexible model in pricing. Okay, this is anti a lot of what our industry is doing. Atomic does T&M. A lot of people tell me I'm a little nutty, but guess what? T&M billing worked out pretty well this year for our clients because if they weren't doing anything, they weren't getting bills. Managed services where you get a fixed fee, those didn't stop. So we had a lot of customers coming to us during this year who wanted the T&M billing style. So I think expenses and expense control is sort of your first reaction. Then you start thinking about mid-tier, right? What are we going to do to build efficiencies in this new world? So they wanted to eliminate the need for waiting around the salon. Because they clearly you couldn't have people 6 feet. We all seen it. We were all 6 feet apart. They had the stickers on the ground, and that didn't work out for them. So very quickly we built out custom development, a texting alert system on their mobile app, and instantly they responded. This only took a few weeks. It was really a very fast turn, and so a $9 haircut became highly technical in the middle of a pandemic. And they controlled the salon traffic. They improved distancing, and they provided a better digital experience, and it allowed them to do what? Contact tracing. If something happened at that salon, you now had the app everybody's using in the store, and you knew who was there the day before. And so if you did have an outbreak, you could contact all those people. So it really served a lot of purposes here. And really helped them get ahead. So now, their customers are really loving this. And what happened? Their customers want it after the pandemic's done. Nobody wants to stand around a hair salon waiting for a haircut, especially somebody like me. The value might not be there. So I think what we're going to find out of this is the people that adjusted, we adjusted so that we could handle customers better. And that is going to go further than the pandemic will ever go. So it forced people into making some digital transformation happen sooner than they would have. But in response, their customer felt very, very, very satisfied and that they were trying to help them during this time. I think of another brand in town that's really done a good job, and I may get some comments, but Delta's done a phenomenal job communicating, selling this. And, they don't have a very good year, but they got a lot of loyalty built up during this year from people feeling that they were on the top of their game. So they took an opportunity and walked it the right way. And so I think that that's another one that really stands out to me for how do you react? Generally, it's not going to be a Band-Aid if you're helping your customers buy easier from you. It just takes a pandemic to sometimes show us how to do it. We had a manufacturer who, again, wanted immediate reaction was productivity advantages. And so we had to quickly help them roll out a mobile device management solution. so that they could have more devices in the field. They needed to really quickly push profiles, SharePoint access, internal apps, file servers, and their ERP out, and they just weren't ready. But they reacted quickly, and they knew that if they did this, it was an investment. It's not a Band-Aid. They're not going to go backwards. They needed to do some of this stuff for the last 5 years. They just never did it. You know, necessity sometimes is our greatest invention, and a lot of need. If you react to things that are real with technology, then I think they hold after the pandemic's over and you move forward. And so we really are seeing people do it in the right way, not the wrong way. So I think your next poll question's jumping out. Someone at my company has been target of phishing emails since the pandemic began. This is something we have seen a massive increase in, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that, because that also is part of this digital transformation. You've got to be careful. You're going into the Wild West. I look forward to seeing what those turn out to be.
Jim, I'm going to end that poll for you so you can see those results. We have about 29 people who are doing these. So I've got the results for you, and shocking.
Not shocking at all.
Right.
I hate to say it. I wish that wasn't the case, but unfortunately it is the case. 100%. Wow. I would have thought maybe a little below that, but it is. And so I guess the big question to everybody is, why do you think that's the case? I mean, clearly, I think we have to be honest with each other. We were on the rise anyway. So we were already seeing massive phishing attempts before 2020. So I don't want to make it seem like all of a sudden the pandemic brought it out more. But I do think you have to look at a few factors. One, more people are at home. And what I've seen is a reduction in people's attention being towards security when you're at home 24 hours a day. Kids are screaming, people are running around. You might be working at 6 in the morning or at 11 at night. Your spouse and you aren't getting along very well. You've all been cooped up and inside for a rather long time. Your guard's down. You're not thinking about security. You're not thinking about your company, that when you used to go to the office, you kind of mentally prepared yourself when you went to the office every day. You kind of put your armor on as you went to the office, and you scanned your card and you went in and you put in your password. And we really had such a change in our workflow that we've seen a massive rise then in what I'll just call lackadaisical behavior in email. And it's led to this massive rise in phishing. So it leads us to, which is a great poll, and it leads us to this idea here that we've had lots of companies come to us and they need a security advantage. All of these factors here, your entire security posture has changed. You need to do more. Those little once a year things you did so you could click the compliance list on your audit. We see clients now they're having us fish them monthly. And then now we take the people who don't perform in those fish tests very well, and we're taking them through training. They're getting more serious about their cybersecurity posture. They're really looking at policies, because you've had to rewrite your policies now for everyone being remote workers. There used to be one remote worker policy for VPN, and that was about it. And now you have to get real about these things. Real workstation encryption, how you're going to handle devices everywhere. Yeah, it used to be the accounting people took their computers home to VPN into the accounting system. Besides some salespeople, everybody else did it at the office. Multi-factor was not used wide enough. Now we're seeing it more. Password policies were not enforced. Now we're seeing it really enforced. If you have a password policy that's more than 90 days, it's ridiculous. I don't really believe in that. You've got to get people to get over the whining and the crying, because they have horrible passwords anyway. It's usually their child's name, their wife's date of birth, or the dog's name and their date of birth. And you can hack into most of them pretty easily. On top of that, we saw that people were not auditing their Active Directory and their configurations enough. And that really is, if I'm going to hack into you, you're going to see it in the Active Directory. So a lot of IT management needed to be done, and IT managers were not doing a good job of it. So all these things culminated, and some of these companies really jumped out in front of it, and some of them got hit hard. So a lot of crazy stuff going out there in cybersecurity. You need to pay attention to it, whether you come to us or you go to any your people. I highly recommend outside firms, because your inside people, even in IT, get very closed off and they only see what they can see. Outside people are bringing you the vision of what every company is seeing. And this stuff is real. We saw a lot of people get taken for money in crypto, a lot of people getting viruses, and a lot of phishing. Also, we don't talk about this a lot. We've really helped companies change their banking procedures. So a lot of wire transfers, you got to get outside email. You got to get outside even just the banking infrastructure. For us, all wires have to be actually authorized verbally at phone numbers they dial from the bank to us, and there's a code that's given. So it's crazy what we do, but we've really protected ourselves from wire fraud, and wire fraud is associated very tightly with the phishing scams. So email cannot be the single path for any financial decision. And I think most of you have learned that, but it's frightful how many companies we still see where the CEO in an angry email told someone to transfer $10,000, and they do it. And it was all a phishing scam, and it wasn't the CEO. We keep hearing about these things over and over again.
Jim, before we get into the private equity case study, we've got a couple of questions here. One from Vincent. Jim, do we have any customers that have been approached to be a COVID vaccine super site? And if yes, how are you helping them ramp up their technology?
I have not. We have not heard that. And we manage, almost 3 of the stadiums in town. Well, it's Minnesota, so stadiums don't seem like a very, but even US Bank, I haven't heard any approach of them yet. I have not. Don't know. I would imagine that you could get and use an app and have people sign up. There are a lot of healthcare apps right now. I used one earlier this week. I want to find it because it was a great app and it worked incredibly well. And now I can't find it. It was a healthcare app, and it was called Solv, S-O-L-V. And you can pick a time, show up, wait in line in your car, drive through, and they handled everything. So I do think that there are places that have perfected this, and I would not look to custom build anything. I would push someone to go find a solution that already exists. If it was April, May, then maybe building a custom app or something to do it for you would be good, but there's enough out there now that I would use something else. There's stuff out there that can help you. We can look around, and Ryan can help you with that if that's a big concern.
Absolutely. Last question here from Todd. Todd's asking, how have companies handled at-home security and monitoring tools? Any best practices that we can share for home security?
I mean, mostly, we've had crazy asks, right, from CEOs who want to control everything the clients are their users are doing. Can they see them working from home? Can they reverse the camera and see their people if they don't know to see what they're doing? There's some things that, you can go pretty far. At the end of the day, most of your systems need to be protected by your end users. If they give out their passwords, or they get hacked, or they let their family use their home or their work computers, you're going to have problems. So the number one thing you have to do, and I think we have a slide here coming up, and I may just kind of go to it because I don't know where we are on time. I think we're probably getting on a little. So I'm going to get to this one. I like this slide a lot. So you really have to start at the base. You got to start at security, governance, and audit. If you don't have that, you're not going to get anywhere. You got to have a mechanism for what, what are your policies and procedures then? How are you going to audit those policies and procedures? What access controls do you put into place? IT can harden things, and you can have network and physical security, but your end user who has a laptop at home, you know, if they let their kid go to a gaming site, they're going to download a virus. You're done. We've already lost everything that we've put in place. And if we can't control the end user and train them to be a smart, educated, understanding end user, there's nothing IT and there's nothing any of us can do to lock them down. I mean, there are, but you're going to get highly ineffective users by the time we get there. We can make them all work remote on a desktop that they log into, and therefore if they use their laptop for something else, it can't hurt you that much. But guess what? If a virus is on that computer and then we log in remotely to a remote desktop, it can infect it. So there's only so much you can do. You've got to educate your users, and you have to do it all the time. You have to build it into your culture. You have to build it into the time. It's not that complicated once you get the right policies written. There's probably 20 to 25 policies that you should have around IT. You should be training to them every 3 to 6 months. There are courses online people can take. There are PowerPoints somebody inside your organization can walk people through. And really you just, I hate to say it, man, we're all back in grade school, and it's like doing a fire drill every other month so that we know where we're going. If we don't take the time to do it, you're not going to have a very good fire drill. If you do, after a while, everybody knows where they're going and they know what's up. And I hate to say that is the best plan is to educate the hell out of all your users and fish them all the time and try to get them to do things they aren't supposed to be doing. We do it at Atomic all the time. It's pretty funny sometimes. They're always trying to get me. They still have never gotten me on one of our campaigns, but they've gotten a lot of people. And we send them to a remedial education camp where we change your behavior through shock therapy. Because we really have to get users to understand that when they do bite into this, they're probably going to cause a lot of problems for the company. So education is number one, but you can't educate if you don't have policies and procedures and a sort of security governance going on about your company, what you do. And every time you add something, every time you add a new software as a service provider, every time you add another vendor, you've got to make sure that you have a policy in place and an audit to bring that in and then not destroy anything that you already have in place. It has to be brought in and fed in. We have programs that'll do it for you. We have programs that we can teach you to do it. We have programs where for 20, 25 hours, someone will come in. We have all of those policies in draft form, and we help you customize them to your company, and then kind of go through, harden your network, and take a look at you every year so that you're really doing a good job here, because we don't see this going away. I think it's probably going to end up being one of the benefits of COVID is that all you maybe started paying attention more to security after we've been screaming and yelling about it for the last 20 years. But now that your users are remote, you're really starting to see what some of the problems are. Hope that answers the question, but those are the truths of it. Ryan will be sending this out to everybody, I believe, and there is a list here. I like this screen a lot, and there's also a download that can kind of help walk you through those security risks. I would also argue that if your company is of any size, you should have a risk board, not just an IT board, but a risk board that meets every so often with a couple of key players so that you keep actually a list of risks and how you're going to mitigate them. And sometimes just identifying them is half the battle. And then after that, usually mitigating most of these risks is pretty easy. A lot of it's training, and a lot of it's just getting people to comprehend what they're doing every day with your systems and your assets. We're right at 55 minutes, I think. Ryan,
Absolutely
more questions?
Right.
Nothing in the chat right now, but I would assume that some will flow in here.
I went kind of fast.
But while we are waiting,
so Go ahead, Ryan.
One thing that I think that might be interesting for the group, Jim, is what excites you about technology in 2021, and we just probably touched on what some of the fears may be with security, but what are some trends that are high alert on your radar that you'd think that the FEI community here should be focusing on as well?
I mean, I think that there is a fear side of all this, right? But to me, I'm actually excited about the fact that we just had like a pretty heavy event that's still going on. There are positives to take out of it. The positives that excite me are, I think a lot of workers realized that they were kind of stuck in some ruts, and a lot of people have been shaken, and that there are good that come out of those things. I think that people, you're not going to have to yell at your customer account people and your salespeople to go out and meet with people when this is over. I think they'll be out hugging customers. And so I think that there is a physical nature to all of our businesses, how we interact with our clients, that excites me. And I think that this new video world and this chat world is going to be wonderful if we can use it on top of great physical personal relationships. And I think that, this has made people look at their digital workflow. And I think that people are starting to reinvent themselves because we're scared this is going to happen in 5 or 10 years again. And it probably is. And we probably have to adapt to this new world. And I think that there are lots of opportunities in that new world of how we're going to exist, how we're still going to make money, how we're going to handle our employees, how we're going to grow during these times. And I think it makes us look at a lot of the things we're doing, and it makes us reinvent them. We reinvented ourselves a lot this last year. IT is something that a lot of people have to deal with. They don't always love dealing with. And I think that we help enable people to deal with these types of things. And that excites me a lot. So all of the things that people do, it's going to make people go to the cloud faster. It's going to make people outsource things faster. People want to be nimble. They don't want to have a lot of employees that aren't necessary. And I think that that's going to really change the marketplace a lot.
Awesome. We've got 2 more questions here before we wrap. Tim Schmidt is asking, how are companies responding to remote access VPN bandwidth and ERP access performance issues?
The one thing that was very interesting is I thought we would have a lot of bandwidth issues at the beginning, and we really didn't, especially with all the school users on. Inside the 7-county metropolitan area, we have not had a lot of bandwidth problems with our clients going from people's homes to their applications. We have had people that didn't know a lot about VPN that had to learn pretty fast how to have, go from 10 VPN users to 200. A lot of that was just, there are easy technical ways to do it. We've actually seen less ERP problems because having people come individually from a pipe, which, believe it or not, a lot of the Comcast and a lot of the home users have fairly decent bandwidth, is easier than everybody coming from one single office. And so we've seen an increase there. I will say that we've had to pay more close attention to our clouds, our virtual servers, watching, but we've always done this really well with our customers, watching when utilization gets there and bringing more servers in. I don't know if that has dramatically changed. So I'd have to look into that, but it hasn't really been a big factor in anything that we've seen.
Awesome. We've got one final question here from David. What percentage of customers are planning for a new permanent work from home structures going forward?
I'll be honest, I think this summer there were a lot of people talking about it. And then come third quarter, I think the bloom came off the rose a little bit with my conversations with people. Certain workforces like law firms, architecture firms, high professional service firms, I think they are looking at a hybrid. They're shrinking their offices and they're going to have people work remotely and come in. And I've heard that from a lot of high professional companies. From the mid tiers, they want their people back because they've seen in the third and fourth quarter that efficiency dropped. They don't know whether that's just politics impacting people, and people were, watching the news a lot at home and things were happening. But I think, we all know that some of us have employees home watching Netflix while they're working, taking care of their kids. And I have a lot of employees asking me to come back. So from our perspective, I do have higher professional companies talking about going hybrid if they don't have long-term leases. But I haven't had anybody really walk away from their offices. I haven't seen anybody just totally go to, okay, this is what we're going to do from now on. I'm sure some smaller startups and some smaller consultancies are going to do that if you're 5, 10, 20 people. I think there are a lot of cohabitation spaces in town where a company can go meet for a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting. And I do think that'll happen. I do think real estate market's going to be very interesting in commercial real estate for a little while. And I know that we're going to now have people working at home 2 days a week in 3 days a week. And I think that will become a norm. So I see the hybrid being a norm, and maybe 10% of the companies we work with seriously thinking about any great change.
Awesome. Well, we've got one final question. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And Nancy, if we can get one more in. The last follow-up from Todd is, will the mobile 5G transition provide for stronger security options for organizations?
My gut reaction is absolutely not. It is more bandwidth. It is built for faster downloads of video, pictures, and other things. But you don't want to rely on your mobile service or on your telecom for any security whatsoever. You still need to do all the things we talked about. And I would argue that you still need your VPNs and your two-factor. 5G does not affect any of that in any way. It's just faster. If they tell you it's more secure, it's a sales point. That's it.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, with
Thank
that
you.
said, I think that wraps all the questions.
That does, and we are out of time. I do thank you, Jim and Ryan, for your participation in today's webinar. It was an influx of a lot of information, great questions from our audience. Participants, thank you very much again for sending in your questions. Should you have any CPE issues today, please don't hesitate to reach out. CPE notification email should be out in 7 to 10 business days. We do appreciate your time today and wish you the best of the afternoon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.